Hi, Erika.
Hi, Amanda. How are you? It's so great to see you.
It is so great to see you. I first just want to say that one of the reasons that Together Rising exists is to be a bridge between people who care deeply about things and don't know what to do to help, and those people who are the warriors who are doing just world saving, life saving work on the ground, and to connect the two and to show how we're all connected all the time and that we can be powerful. And there is no one on the planet that exemplifies the other side of the bridge better than you. Truly love you.
I, I love you guys so much, and I really would not even be here today if it weren't for you ladies. I think when we first started this work, we had no funding, no money. We just saw families being separated at the border, and we had to do something about it. But with Together Rising's help, we built an organization. We're building a movement. We've had thousands of volunteers come through. We've reunified dozens of families. The love is more than mutual.
I'll never forget the call that you made to me. That was right when we had just found out that as a result of the zero tolerance family separation policy, there was this whole universe of families that weren't even to that point even part of the Miss Out litigation, that they had been throughout the backlash against family separation, that the government had been deporting parents that they had separated from families. So I just want to, can you take us back to that time period and when you were just kind of building from scratch what would be a way to make the story end differently for all of those families?
Sure. So first, I'm really happy to see you. I think the last time I saw you face to face was when we brought the parents back, right? When we were in Cali together. So it's really great to see you. So I think the first time we talked, like you said, it was summer of 2018. It was the height of family separation. And I was working on the border, seeing families getting separated every single day, and actually seeing parents getting deported. Before we met, I had worked, I remember one dad in particular who was separated from his 5-year-old daughter. And he was so desperate to see her again that he also agreed to his deportation with the understanding that his daughter would be waiting for him. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And in that particular case, in working with the child's attorney, we knew it was in both of their best interests for the child to be returned with him to Guatemala. So we worked on that, but it took a long time to get them reunified. And I met a lot of other parents and families where it definitely wasn't in the child's best interest to go back because they could have been hurt or killed by the people that they had fled. So that was really when I started to work closely with these families, and the litigation at that point, we hadn't gotten to a settlement agreement. So we were fighting for them to be reunified in the United States when they couldn't go back to their home countries because they were in danger. So um, the challenge, like you said, was really finding these parents. So um, we at the end of June, the ACLU was able to get an injunction to at least stop separations. But by that point, I think hundreds of parents had already been deported without their children. So we worked really closely with the Miss L Steering Committee, which is a group of nonprofits tasked mostly with finding the separated parents and helping to effectuate reunification, um, mostly by referring these cases to other nonprofits. So like you said, I think we're the biggest binational legal service organization. But even then, we were unique in the fact that we were working across countries. So we took all the referrals for parents who had been deported for whom there was a protection concern. In other words, the kid could not go back to home country because they would have been hurt or killed. So over that summer, we started getting, I think in total, around 100 referrals for parents where the Nacelle Steering Committee had screened them and knew, okay, this kid can't go back. Maybe the parents in hiding, maybe they've already fled back to Mexico. There were just a lot of different situations. So we started interviewing them by phone. So I remember really clearly the first dad that I talked to. His name is Elmer. He had been separated from his teenage daughter, and he was afraid he would be killed any day. He was back in Honduras. He really, didn't think he was going to survive to see his daughter again. And at that point, my son was only a few months old, and maybe it was the hormones, maybe it was just the situation, but I was not going to let that happen. I felt such a strong conviction that no matter what obstacles stood in our way, we were going to get Elmer back with his daughter, right? And I remember that feeling of just, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this happen. And at that point, I had no idea how that was going to work, because I was like, barely getting paid. We had like barely any grants. It was just like not, we weren't in a situation where I had any idea. But I think right around that same time is when I talked to you. And I think I probably told you about Elmer and some of the other parents that we'd been speaking to. And it was like every case was more heartbreaking than the last, right? And especially when we started talking to the kids. And, I think of that group that ended up coming back in 2019, I think the youngest kids were maybe like 7 or 8, something like that, when they were separated. Maybe there were a few who were even younger, but when we were talking to the kids who were like old enough to understand what was going on, that made it even worse, because a lot of them were in really terrible situations in government custody, or maybe staying with a sponsor who like really didn't want to take care of them. Some of them felt angry at their parents because they didn't understand that their parent hadn't wanted to abandon them, that they were forced to abandon them. And they were just in so much pain. And seeing a child in pain like that also just really, it's beyond motivation. It's just like, it's like a fire. I like lit a fire inside of me to try to help these families. So with the support of Together Rising, we took 5 separate trips to Central America. We kind of figured out like, okay, who are the ones who we think that we can get reunified in the United States? We went to Central America, but to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. We traveled to remote areas to interview parents. We got Indigenous language interpreters. We, took small planes into remote jungles in Guatemala. It was wild what our staff went through, and I'm so proud of them, because, some of the parents just couldn't get to us, right? We had to go to them. And we conducted extensive in-person interviews. We helped gather documentation. For some of the parents, it was too dangerous for us to go to them, so we helped them move to a safer location. And around the time when, we were really deep in this work, the ACLU reached a settlement with the government, and our clients were all left out. They, like you mentioned, they weren't included in the reunification efforts. What the judge said is that it would be a rare and unusual circumstance that a parent who was deported would be reunified with their child in the United States. And that was a decision we were really unwilling to accept. So, we still went through the court process. We argued that all of them were rare and unusual circumstances, like they should be deported, or I'm sorry, they should be reunified under the settlement agreement as it was written. So we worked really hard to submit all our applications through that process, but at the same time, I wasn't going to let that be the only option. We already knew that the judge wasn't really willing to reunify deported parents, so we had to think of another option. So having the experience of working in Mexico, we knew that we could apply for a visa for parents to travel through Mexico, and that it's perfectly legal for them to present themselves at a US port of entry to seek asylum. So that's what we did. Luckily, at that time, there were still humanitarian visas available to some migrants traveling through Mexico, so we were able to get some of those. we were also really, really lucky that one of the immigration officials, Mexican immigration officials in the south of Mexico, felt for these parents. She wanted to help them. So I'm assuming she was a mom herself, because she really like moved heaven and earth to give these parents visas. And, it's people like that along the way that made this possible, that it's like, we couldn't have done it without you guys, without her, without everyone who helped along the way. It really just was a miracle that we got these parents to the US border. At the time when our staff was traveling to southern Mexico to meet the parents and get them their visas so that they could travel to the border, I was renewing my visa in Mexico to try to travel with my staff, obviously. And at that point, this was the end of January of 2019, I learned that the US government had issued an alert on my passport that they designated me as a national security risk, and I was basically deported, or I was refused entry to Mexico by Mexican authorities.
And your partner and Tony, your baby Tony, was 10 months old at that time, right?
Yeah. And I had been living in Mexico at that point with a visa. The Mexican authorities actually renewed my visa. I explained to them, like, I have a nonprofit, I'm working here, like, I, have been working with the consulate, like, here, I have this business visa, we're establishing a nonprofit. Like, I explained all these things to them, and they were like, sure, gave me the visa. When they went to swipe my passport, to like finish the visa process, they saw the alert, they detained me, they interrogated me, and ultimately removed me to the United States. I have to admit, I made a complete scene in the immigration office because my infant son was still in Mexico, and I begged to be able to go back and get him, but they didn't let me. They told me I had to go back to the United States. So luckily, I was able to pick up my son. Just wonderful people at the Mexican consulate helped me. They waived the alert on my passport. They knew it was political, and they allowed me to return to Mexico just in time to bring the 29 parents and their family members to the border, where they were all admitted. Eventually, they were all reunified with their children. So it ended up being a success, but that was just 29 of hundreds and maybe over 1,000 parents who were deported without their kids. So obviously, the work wasn't over at that point, but it was an auspicious beginning to, work that has continued to be successful.
And just to, a few months after that happened, there was a whole expose that to you, where you weren't allowed to travel and be on your visa, it was exposed that the administration had placed these security threats on several advocates like you who were working on family reunification, so that you would not be able to travel to be able to continue this work. So that was quite intentional, as it turns out. So of the 500 or so that are left, I know that this week Together Rising is funding another $245,000 that it's going to require to go back and bring 36 more of those parents back to be reunified with their children. When is that gonna happen?
Actually, we're working on the 38. It grows every day. We get more clients.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
But we're also going back to look at the cases of the parents who waived reunification, the ones we knew didn't qualify under Miss L, because now we have this opportunity before the task force established by President Biden. So I have to say I've been a little frustrated because I don't think they're moving fast enough, but of course that's because we have direct contact with these parents, and every single day that they're separated is like an excruciating eternity. So I know it's a difficult job. You'd be surprised that not even all Democratic Congress people support reunification in the United States. So politically, it's an uphill battle. I would think it would be a no-brainer for bipartisan support for this type of reunification, but unfortunately, it's not. So I know it's not easy, but I hoped that the task force would be bolder and move faster, especially with the 30 something parents who I'm sure it's like up to 40 in the time that we're talking, but especially with the ones we've screened, we've identified as vulnerable. We know that they're in danger in home country. We know that their kids are suffering without them and they're ready to go now, right? And I know that there was some discussion from the government of having to pay for it and that being a challenge. And we said, we will help, with the support of Together Rising to pay for these trips. Like there's no reason to delay. So that's kind of where we're at. We've offered these resources, thankfully, that have come through the folks at Together Rising. So that's just been really critical, but we're still waiting for a response. So,
and just to be clear, I mean, I know that there's a lot in the immigration world that is confusing and complicated and involved. And there's a lot to be talked through and a lot to be improved upon there. From where I sit, there is zero to be confused about here. I was a corporate attorney, and the way I understand the world is that the way our system is supposed to work is that if you commit an injury against someone that can be proven, for which there are damages, that you have the responsibility to fix that, either by fixing it or by giving dollars to. And to date, I mean, this is 3 years in the making. To date, the government has reunited 0 of these families. They have admitted that they separated them. They have admitted that they tore them apart. There is the truth is that there was so many misrepresentations made to these parents. They were promised they'd be reunited in their home country. They were told that if they gave up their asylum claims, that they would be reunited with their children. So they were not given the option for their kids to be deported with them in many cases. So if you crossed the border, if you were with your child and your child was torn away, I mean, we sat with the people on the border who said I begged for my child to be deported with me, and they were not. So the government literally took the children, deported the parents, and then said, there is literally nothing we can do to bring them back together.
It was not just that. When we tried to bring them back, they denied us, right? Like I mentioned, we went through the court process. We submitted at first 43 applications for parents to return to be reunified to the government, and they denied every single application. They fought tooth and nail to keep these parents apart. And even after Biden came into office, they weren't budging, right? We just recently had a mom who was separated from her child when the child was 3 years old. She was almost killed in home country. She made her way back. I mean, imagine this woman by herself, made her way back through Mexico, unfortunately ended up in a really dangerous border city where she remains today. Obviously, we reached out to the government and said, hey, can you just let this woman in? Because her kid's waiting for her. Her child's, now 6 years old. And they just keep punting, like, oh, ask Department of Justice or ask the task force or ask the, and it's just like, CBP has discretion to just let her in, right? And this is, I think going back to what you said, it's not that complicated. I know it's complicated politically, but procedurally and logistically, it's not that complicated. Give them a parole document, give them permission to come back. Their kids are waiting for them. The vast majority already had a place to go. And for those who didn't have a place to go or they can't stay where the child's staying, we found them a place to go, right? Everything's put in place. We can buy the ticket tomorrow. We got the passport. I mean, literally, it's just like, all we need is permission for them to come back. And so, the whole issue of creating a task force from the beginning, I felt like it was kind of a stall tactic, at least with respect to these parents, because it's like, just trying to satisfy all these political considerations. But when it comes down to it, all they have to do, they can just issue a visa. They issue how many thousands of visas per year? This is a relatively small number of parents that we're talking about who've suffered egregious harm. There's no reason they should still be separated years later from their children.
Many of these families have been separated for 3 years from their babies. There is we are not talking about sweeping immigration reforms. We are talking about rectifying a human rights violation that was intentionally perpetrated on these families.
Right.
We're talking about rectifying through reunion of families that wrong that was intentionally perpetrated against them. So it is an uncomplicated thing morally to commit to and to get done. And I mean, yeah, the Rising has put together $10 million for the purpose. I mean, it's not that they can do it with zero funding from the government. They could just say, yes, let that mom have her now 6-year-old with whom she's been separated for 3 years back in her arms. It is very simple.
Amanda, if you and I were able to bring parents to the border and get them reunified with their children, why can't the US government do it? I mean, that's the question I keep asking myself. Like I mentioned, when we started out, we had zero money to do this. We had the knowledge of how to do it. You guys came in with the resources and we figured it out, right? So if we can figure it out, they can figure it out. They've done more complicated things than this. And that's what's so frustrating to me is, we keep hearing these excuses of like, it's complicated and there's all these things we have to think about. And like, yeah, we thought of them because we did it, right? We've already reunified families. So we'll show you how. It's just, I don't, yeah, it's very frustrating, but I at least I have hope now that we are moving toward reunification for more families, but this fight is not over. The government to date has not reunified any families. So we need to keep fighting. We need to keep pushing them. And I can guarantee you that there will be parents left out of whatever plan they come up with. And we need to keep fighting for the parents who are left out because no one should be separated from their child.
Period.
The other issue that we're seeing right now is the fact that the entire US asylum system is closed off to families. So we have, for example, today in Tijuana, 1,500 individuals sleeping in tents outside the port of entry because there's just no information about when they could possibly seek asylum. And for a lot of them, they feel that's the safest place for them because they're in danger here in Mexico. And there's just a lot of eyes on the port of entry, right? So I am seeing an increasing number of families send their children alone to the border because now the Biden administration is not expelling unaccompanied children and they have family members willing to care for them in the United States. So if you have a 5-year-old who's getting sick, sleeping in a tent in the cold, in the rain, of course you're going to send them to live with their uncle rather than keep them in a tent, right? So that's another piece of what's happening right now. But I think the bigger picture is that, we have the Flores settlement, which sets minimum standards for detention of children. Those standards are basically that any facility holding children needs to comply with the state welfare or child welfare standards in whichever state the facility is located. The exception to those standards is influx, right? So whenever you have an influx or a surge, then the government can build influx facilities that don't have to meet those standards. So we're talking about
like the new Texas.
Right. So it's been 20 years of this excuse. Oh, there's a surge. We need an influx facility. It's disgusting. I mean, it is a cage. It's a prison-like facility. The kids aren't allowed to touch each other, even to braid each other's hair. They're not allowed to hug. They have to march in military formation. They are just devastated to be there. And right now it's an even worse situation because they're stuck in CBP custody for much longer than they should be. So these are the horrible, cage-like facilities that we were seeing in the news over the past few years. So I think, the Biden administration hasn't had enough time since they've been in office to set up licensed facilities for the number of children we're seeing today, but past administrations certainly had the time. We saw the exact same influx facilities under the Obama administration. We saw them under Trump. So this is something that the government's had time to plan. I'll give Biden a little bit of a pass because he just got here. But next spring, when we have another influx, if they're serious about fixing this issue, they will permanently increase the capacity of Office of Refugee Resettlement licensed facilities where children can be kept in home-like settings in accordance with every single child welfare standard in this country. Like, there's no excuse to treat immigrant children in a way that we would never treat US citizen children. There's no excuse. They could have predicted this. They could have planned for it. Obviously, the Trump administration didn't. Biden has the opportunity now to plan for next year.
You and Nora and your whole team is so incredible, and we're grateful, and we're in it for the long haul. And you let us know what you need from us and from our team on the other side of the bridge, and we're just here for it all. And happy birthday to Tony yesterday. Was it good? He's our warrior advocate baby. He was born right at family separation, and he was at the border with us. He's been everywhere.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, like, in experience, that kid's already an old man, but no, like I said at the beginning, it's so awesome to see you. I wish I had more opportunities to see you. You guys are just so amazing, and you're really cool too. So we like that association with you. I feel like we're cooler by osmosis. Just
we need to get you some cooler people. I'm gonna write that down, because if we're the coolest people, fine, give Erika lots of more dollars and find her some cool people.
No, but it is like, I was talking to Erin Anderson, who was one of the staff who worked a lot on these reunification cases, and she's like, it's so cool to be associated with Glennon and Together Rising, and like, Amanda's so amazing. Like, she came to the border. I mean, it was just like stars in her eyes for you. And our entire staff shares the same sentiment. And I just want to say too that it's unique to be able to offer direct support to families. A lot of legal service organizations don't do that. So when our parents were suffering because of the hurricane, we were able to send funds to them to like fix their houses or buy food, right? Things like that. We're able to use funding from Together Rising to help get them their passports, to help them travel. We're able to help their kids out, right? There's some sponsors who lost their jobs during COVID. We were able to help with rent and other expenses so that the kids had someone to take care of them. So that's another huge piece of the funding. It's not just the legal work, it's helping these families survive until they can be reunified. So I just
and the mental health. I mean, that's what I love about what you do, and being able to fund through you mental health services for these families who have been so traumatized has been such an honor, because again, this is what we afflicted upon them, and we have the responsibility to do everything we can to help them through that trauma. And I know, staying in touch with those families. Today is Jay Jesus's birthday, Ariel's dad, and we're keeping in touch with him, and they're doing well, and Ariel's doing remote learning.
Oh, poor thing.
I know, poor him. Speaking of trauma,
I know. Yeah, no, but it's like, just to be able, with this last round of funding, like, before you reached out to offer your support again, the parents were asking us for help, and we kept saying, we'll see if we can do it. And we were diverting other donations to try to help them. And now we can just say, yes, we can help you, right? And that is the best feeling in the world. So I want to thank you for that, because like, it feels so good to be able to support these families and stand in solidarity with them for whatever they need, not just legal help, right? Not just the reunification, but really just helping them thrive in the interim. So that means the world to us. So I just want to thank you specifically for that too.
Likewise. We love you. We can do hard things.
Okay. We're going to keep doing it.
We are.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erika.
Awesome talking to you. Say hi to Glennon.
I will do it.
Your team. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.